DeBoer, Filippi, Finaldi, Garcia, Goff, Haas, Kuehler, Larson, Lent, Mahoney, Mays, McCready, Patel, Paulson, Ruley, Schnipp, Seth, Sayaway, Skaggs, Stout, Strickland, Thornton, Wagmeister, Weathers. Great. We'll go ahead and go into the Pledge of Allegiance led by Speaker Weathers. Right. The program for this evening is the Airport Shuttle Project results with our Director of International Student Experience, Tom Sun. Is Tom here? Okay. Aliana Booman is going to do it instead. Perfect. All right, you can go ahead and head up to the podium.
So if there are extremely specific questions I can't answer, I will defer you to him because this project is his baby. Sorry, Director Sun. But yes, so this is the Travel Assistance Project. This is continuing on from last semester. We did implement the pilot program, and so these are kind of the reflections and the takeaways and how we can update this project for our future. So, next slide. Again, so this is just the agenda, overview of the project, what the results are of the project, and then how we're going to be moving forward. So this project was initially created by Director Sun. He noticed that there was a large disparity, especially in the number of international students who are having a hard time traveling to and from Des Moines to get home between breaks, so winter and summer. This initially is targeting international students first because they seem to have the largest concern, but this has been expanded to include all Iowa State students, not just international students. So keep that in mind. But yes, so phase one was done last summer. Director Sun sent out a quick survey to some international students, kind of gauging what their concerns are, what their priorities were for traveling, and how student government could help. So with those, with that feedback that he got, we started looking at solutions, different ways that we could help international students travel to and from their destinations so they can get there safely, efficiently, in a cost-effective means because travel does get expensive. So again, last fall we did implement the pilot program. It went very, very well, and I'm very excited to say that we are hoping to continue this in future years. So now phase 4, we're going to do a full scale of the test, which will be done next summer as students are traveling home from the end of the semester. So when we implemented the survey last summer, these are kind of the feedback we got. So the most stressful part of students, international students' travel, a lot of it was logistics. A lot of them had long layovers because plane tickets are expensive, and especially the shorter flights are very expensive. So obviously we cannot do a whole lot about the flights, but we can work with traveling to airports with luggage and bags and kind of trying to reduce the cost for those international students so it's not as expensive for them to get home over break so they're allowed to see their families. And so of that survey, we did make a couple pie charts. So this is how the reports came out. So as you can see, most of the international students, over 50% travel to the airport or to Des Moines by taxi, Uber, Lyft. There are some who do have rentals, who do take shuttles as well. But as you can see, there is a minimal amount of international students who are allowed to, who can utilize friends and family to take them to the airport. And again, it also shows how stressful most international students have at least some sort of stress with trying to travel to the airport, trying to figure out when they're going to be picked up, when they're going to be dropped off, and the logistics, especially when you're in a different country, things work a little differently. So yes, the pilot program, as I said, went very, very well. So student government funded 50 bus tickets to and from the Des Moines airport. They were picked up at the intermodal facility. The shuttles were operated by Executive Express, and so we sent this out on a first-come, first-served basis. They were distributed through the third-party company WooBox. Yes, so again, went very well. So key numbers about the project. So all 50 tickets were claimed within 4 hours. There were 100 plus students on the wait list, and the project had 2,500 visits. The website did. So a thing about the website is that it will, if a person visits multiple times, it will still count that as an individual visit. So the numbers may be a lot lower if students were trying to purchase the tickets multiple times. But again, Tom had numerous emails. He was blowing his phone up. I remember him texting me saying, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. But yes, we do have a lot of expressed interest, not only in international students, but for many Iowa State students who are just traveling to various places to go home. So a few areas of improvement that we noted on. So the fairness of the ticket claiming process. So the international students heard about it first, but there were quite a few students who didn't get the memo. And so unfortunately, because the tickets sold out so fast, those students weren't allowed the opportunity, and so it kind of restricted them. So we're opening the claiming process a few days after marketing, so we're going to market this. We're going to be sending out emails. It will still be a first-come, first-served basis, so everybody will have the knowledge of it. It will open at a certain time, so that is how we hope to fix those disparities, and so it's an open communication, so all students know about them. Clear language is a big thing, so some students thought that this was the only way to get to Des Moines, rather than this is just an option if they prefer, to take, a taxi or an Uber. Obviously, they are completely allowed to do so, but we thought that this might be a little cheaper option and save some stress, especially since it's through Iowa State. So the claiming process was also a little difficult because the wait list, again, Tom kept getting all of the emails, and the International Student Scholars Office also got all the emails, so it was hard to navigate when you get 100 plus emails in 4 hours trying to figure out, okay, how do I put these people on the wait list? So trying to figure out a way to communication that is directly to that third party. So instead of getting all of this mess and us involved, it's just the international student and that third party direct line of communication. And then, so we do want to expand the number of students and number of locations served. So we are thinking about a couple options for these. So we could either have multiple shuttle providers, but one option that we're really looking at is chartering an entire shuttle bus. So right now the tickets would be about 40, so initially the tickets were about $40 a piece, but if we do shuttle an entire bus, it would reduce that to about $16. So there is obviously a concern because if we don't fill the entire bus, the tickets may be higher. But one way we want to combat that is one, gauging interest in students, seeing, okay, who needs a ride when, so we can kind of figure out a schedule for students to go on. And another way would be to charge a small fee. So initially the tickets were free, but as a result, some students may say, oh, it's just a free ticket. So if they don't use it, that could be taken away from somebody else. So at least if we charge a small fee, whether it's $5 or $10, that would, if we charge $5 a ticket, that would increase the amount of students that we can have by 30%. And even if a student decides not to use that ticket, we would still be getting some of those funds. So it would kind of bring down the cost a little bit to make it more effective to allow for more students. So I guess, yeah, any questions? There are a few questions on there. Tom did put some answers on there, so if there are specific ones that are on there that you cannot see or you just want to ask me about, feel free. But yes, that is the overview of the project.
Speaker Weathers, sorry about that.
Thanks for presenting, Director Booman. Obviously, yeah, this is Tom's baby, but I appreciate you stepping in and babysitting. So you talked about charting an entire bus for multiple people. Based on the data that we have, do we know whether or not that would work? Was there a lot of overlap between people's flights so that we could send them all there at once? Or
I'm not 100% sure, but I do believe that there are quite a few students who did have flights around the same time, especially if they are traveling to the same area. I know a lot of, especially the international students, when they're traveling here, they travel in groups. So again, I'm a peer mentor for the GWC program. A lot of my mentees this year were international students, and I know that they all traveled as a pack. I think that's a safe way for a lot of students to do it, and it might be a bit cheaper if they book them together. So again, I'm not 100% sure, but I think a lot of international students do travel together.
Okay, that's fair, thank you. Another question I had was, it's escaping me now. I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Senator Seth?
Hi, thanks for coming. This is really happy to see that this was a really popular program and that it went really well. The question I had for you was about the idea of charging a small fee for the to like $5, $10, something like that. Where would that money go? So whose money would it be? Like if you did charge students a fee, would it be like technically like money that student government would receive or like that a different organization would receive? Because I'm pretty sure we can't raise our own funds.
I'm not 100% sure, so you will have to defer Tom on that. I'm not sure how he plans on allocating those funds and where exactly they would go. I'm assuming they would go directly to the company that we would be using. So if $5 a student, it would go directly for the deposit or however much we have to pay for the charter buses so we can operate those. That is what I'm assuming, but again, I'm not 100% sure, so may have to ask Director Sen about that.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fine. That does clarify a little bit kind of my confusion. Thank you.
Speaker Weathers.
Came back to me. So do we know what percentage, obviously this program was open to everyone, but it was brainstormed to try to help international students. Do we know what percentage of the users were international students?
I do not.
Okay, do we know if we even have that data?
I also do not know that.
Okay, that's all right.
Tom told me this last minute yesterday, so I'm just here.
Okay, that's a good question for Tom then.
Are there any more questions for Aliana?
Can I say something quick? I will say that Tom has said he will watch the live stream, so if any of you have specific questions, he will be reaching out to you, or if you want to reach out to him and ask him about those, he would love to speak with you about it. One note.
Thank you, Aliana. Move on to open forum. Open forum is an open discussion of issues relevant to students. Is there anyone here for open forum this evening? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and go into adopting tonight's agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda for this evening? Senator Mahoney.
I move to add Senator Patel to the roll.
Any objection? All right, Senator Patel has been added to the roll. Any other changes to tonight's agenda? Any objection? Right. Adopt tonight's agenda. Moving on to approval of minutes from last week. Any objection? All right, seeing none, last week's minutes are approved. Moving on to committee reports, beginning with rules with Speaker Weathers.
Hello, everybody. Rules saw a confirmation hearing of our LIS nominee, a new potential liberal arts and sciences senator, and she went through the committee favorably. That was unanimous, passed via unanimous consent. Same process as we've seen before. They should be more than qualified, but I do encourage questions. Additionally, we saw 2021 Pepsi. We saw Pepsi. Permitting effective pathways to Senate involvement. I believe there's some minor amendments on that, but the bill as a whole is good to go. Was sent favorably via UC, so that should just make it easier for us to appoint new senators as gaps arise. And then we have 2021-3-008Y, adopting the operating rules of Senate. That's Vice Speaker Bates' big project that he's been working on in tandem with some other people as well. There's some changes to that. There's going to be there will be a motion to update the links on there. So the links will now show the changes that we're making from the previous bylaws and what the operating rules, what differences those have from the bylaws as well. There's a lot there. Obviously, you should have questions about it. I had a ton of questions about it. There's a lot of pages to go through. But the crux of it's very simple. It's just moving one section of the bylaws into its own unique document. So that was favorably via unanimous consent as well. I think that's all that's really relevant to bring up right now.
Moving on to Finance Committee with Finance Director Zastro.
Hello. There we go. Thank you. Yeah, so Finance Committee met yesterday. I'm going to get those minutes out to you. I haven't gotten them back from my clerk yet, but I'll get those out to you with the memo tonight. We saw just one bill, actually, the first aid training for mental health. That was postponed indefinitely in committee because it was we don't need to pay for it. So that bill is getting tabled. We also had a conversation with the Genre yesterday, which is a student organization currently in debt to student government, about creating a debt contract with them. I believe that will be seen by Senate 2 meetings from now, so it would be on first read next week. We also discussed another bill, Ski and Snowboard Club, which is currently on first read, but their event is this Saturday. They were not at committee, so we did not see that bill. We didn't take any formal action on it. We didn't make any amendments to it. I'm going to be calling their treasurer and president here in a second, trying to get them here. They currently have no representative here, so if their event's on Saturday and nobody's here, we would not be voting on it tonight. We would postpone it indefinitely. So that's where it stands right now. We're going for annuals. I'll send that schedule. Again, if anybody wants to make us food, that'd be great. I will, so I'll send out a schedule for annuals for you. I've been super busy working with clubs. The final deadline for budgets due is this Friday. And we already have budgets due for sports clubs. The initial request with still 6 groups outstanding is $24,000 more than we allocated to them last year, and that is only about 1/8 of the total annuals funding. So if you scale that up to what we would expecting all organizations to be requesting, it is going to be a tough year for us budget-wise. But that is something that I will hopefully be giving a program about in the next 2 weeks. I haven't heard back yet, but that is between the debt contract, another contract that we're going to be seeing soon, the annuals bill, and also asset, and also the supplemental funding bill that we're going to have accompanying the annual allocations bill. I'll be giving a program on that soon, hopefully. So hopefully that'll address any questions, and I can also take any right now. Great, I'm going to go call the treasurer. Oh, Jacob Khan has a question.
For the food, any dietary restrictions and or preferences?
I don't know. I'll send that.
Get back to me on that.
All right, moving on to the PR committee with Director of Outreach.
If you have not picked up your crew neck yet, please do so now, because they look great. The tablecloth is in. It looks great. It doesn't have the weird mud stain as the last one did, and it will fit the table much better than the old one did. And chip clips will be arriving next week. So with that in mind, I will start making tabling schedules for you guys to table at and get your outreach credits finished, so you guys can be on track with that. The newsletter came out this week, so be sure to take a look at that and get caught up on all the student government events happening. The giveaway baskets are coming along very nicely. We will start getting them all assembled, I believe, and get that campaign launched very shortly. And we did have the pizza event with the candidates. Turnout wasn't superb, but that's because we weren't located in the best location for the public to come. But the next event is Thursday, February 24th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we're going to have an assortment of desserts, and it will be in the Campanile room, I believe. So we will be in a much better location, and I have much higher hopes for this event. But that is all I have.
Speaker Weathers.
Hi, Christian. Last week I asked the question about the article from the Daily about low student knowledge about student government. And obviously I'm not attacking the PR committee or you or anyone on it, but I was just curious if a conversation has been had or if there's any plans to redirect what we're doing on PR in order to try to curb some of that.
Yeah, thank you so much for the update. So we're most certainly going to be adding that to our next agenda with PR. And like I mentioned last week, I will be sending you a little outreach program that will be presented at the next Senate.
Okay, I look forward.
Senator Mays.
Are there any updates on the T-shirts that were coming in? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, let me see here. They're in. Andis needs to pick them up. And obviously she's not in the best condition, but we will help her out.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we'll move on to Diversity and Inclusion Committee with with Director Boomen.
Oh, hey. So a few updates from me. The DI committee has been doing a lot of outreach, or we're attempting to. So each week we are inviting a new student organization to come sit in our committee, kind of learn about what student government does. Last week we had the Black Student Alliance come. This week we will be having the Color of Love, and hopefully next week we may be having the Alliance for Disability Awareness. So I'm super excited to have that method of outreach. Also tonight at 7 p.m. Unfortunately, this does not apply to most of you, but I will be holding the special session for the senatorial information presentation. It has been approved by the Election Commission, so this is an official sanctioned senatorial information presentation. I'm hoping to get as much outreach as I can, and I'm hoping a lot of students attend, so if you would like to know how that goes, I will most definitely let you know. And I did officially confirm the new town hall date. I don't remember if I mentioned this last week, but it is February 24th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. in the Campanile Room. We will be having food. The doors will open at 6:30 for mingling. Cardinal Room, not Campanile Room. Thank you for that. Cardinal Room. Rephrase. But yes, we have a lot of great things. We are hoping to see Senator Finaldi tonight to our committee. She's very passionate about her projects, and she's got a lot of great ideas. So that's all I have.
Moving on to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Seth.
Howdy, folks. Can you hear me okay? No? Okay. Is this better? Okay. All right. We'll do that then. What did I do? Student Initiatives had its regular meeting on Monday. We did a fair bit of planning for the trivia night that is coming up on March 3rd from 6 to 8. Yeah. So y'all should come to that because trivia is really fun and we're really fun and everybody wants to have a good time. So come to trivia on March 3rd, 6 to 8. Promise you won't regret it. Also, it's free. So that's pretty lit too. We also had subcommittee meetings for another project that we're working on for Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. So we're planning an event for that in April to talk about sexual violence on campus, as that's been a really big issue this year. I'm sure we've all seen the emails in our inboxes. And yeah, I have a bill up tonight to confirm 2 new senators to my committee. So very excited about that. And I may be interviewing a potential new at-large soon as well. If you have any questions, let me know.
Right. Civic engagement, Senator Paulson is absent. Senator Breck, would you have any update on civic engagement? Okay. Move on for that. Is anyone else on civic engagement here tonight? All right. Moving on with comments from the Student Government Advisor with Sophia.
Thank you, Evate. Hello, everyone. I'm going to turn this one off. Jeez Louise. Okay, so I just wanted to say a few things today, as I kind of say every week. First and foremost, I want to thank everyone for coming out last Thursday to work with the city and the ISU and Ames Police. I think that was a really good conversation, and you all asked really good questions, and so I'm really proud of all of you for that. And then also for everyone that was able to make it today for the program with CELT, thank you all for showing up. We greatly appreciate it. I know a lot of departments on campus value student input, and student government is a great way to gain a variety of opinions, thoughts, feelings, and experiences. And so thank you for all doing that. I greatly appreciate it. Other than that, I hope you have a good Senate meeting.
Moving on to comments from the judicial branch.
It's on.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Brady. For those of you that don't know me, I'm standing in for Cece tonight because she won't be here until our meeting starts at 7. I'll give you the update from our last meeting. We were scheduled to choose a new Chief Justice from among the Associate Justices, and we decided to postpone it until this week because we had Alex, our pro tempore, he was missing. So we just continued our review of the rules of the court. And we will this week be choosing a new Chief Justice. So that's all from us.
Moving on to comments from the executive branch with President Campbell.
Hey, good evening. I hope that you enjoyed the cookies if you got one. Thank you. To begin, thank you to everyone who attended the CELT collaboration tonight with the Center for Excellence in Learning and Technology. We hope you got something out of that, and we appreciate your attendance there. Otherwise, last Thursday, we had this special meeting with the Ames City Council and police departments, both with the city as well as Iowa State Police Department. They presented findings, independent consultant did, about the result of a traffic stop survey. And there was an article in the Iowa State Daily written about it as well. We had some really excellent questions from members of student government in this room and who aren't here tonight as well. Earlier this week on Monday, 4 members from student government as well as one from GPSS voted on student fees for fiscal year 23. We're still getting some information, but we'll get that out to you all as soon as we can, so stay tuned for more information in that area. The Memorial Union Advisory Board met last week, and there'll be some things happening in the Memorial Union in the coming weeks. So we just talked about the student engagement event authorization system that the Memorial Union has and how they're helping other schools implement similar methods to help student organizations have prepared and organized events. We had Faculty Senate, our Director of Academic Affairs, Emily Roberts, attended on Tuesday. One point of interest for you all might be that a major in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences is actually Megan's major, Agriculture and Society. I believe was approved for a name change to, or maybe I'm speaking, I wasn't there, but they are proposing Agricultural and Rural Policy Studies. So that is on the docket, and that's one of the things Faculty Senate might do. We had a legislative ambassador visit to the Capitol today. They were actually up on the dome of the Capitol with Senator Philippi and then Chief of Staff Jacob Ludwig. And then 2 last things here, if I could ask for your attention. There are 2 areas of the university that they're looking for qualified, engaged undergraduate representatives. And if anybody is interested in serving on the permanent U.S. Diversity Class Committee, beginning this fall, they're going to be doing a large deep dive into the current classes that are listed as U.S. Diversity Perspectives. And from there, they're going to go forward with the new objectives and identify if the class is going to remain on the list, needs to be updated, can remain as is, or it will be taken off completely. So they're looking for student representatives on that. Reach out if you're interested, or if you know someone that is interested. And finally, my last point in the executive update was the Iowa State University Committee for the Advancement of Women and Gender Equity. They're also looking for undergraduates to work to help on projects. One of their most recent ones was the university report on the status of women and gender equity here at Iowa State. So with both those opportunities, please reach out or maybe recommend or tap people if you think they'd be great for that. Have a fantastic week and hope all exams go well. Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to Internal Matter Special Orders 2021-3-027 SD, seating senators representing the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences with Vice Speaker Advait.
The nominee would like to head up to the lectern. LAS Council made a nomination earlier this week. This nominee, as Speaker Weathers mentioned, went through rules yesterday, was sent favorably, but I'll let the nominee speak for themselves. If you'd just like to talk about why you're interested in Senate and something you're perhaps interested in doing as a member of this organization. Thank you.
In computer science. This is my second semester at Iowa State, and I want to get more involved on campus. Explore some leadership positions. I feel the Senate is a great place for me to start doing that. So I spend a lot of time with freshmen every day, and not many people are aware about the student government and what it has to offer. I feel like spreading the word and that outreach is one of my main goals as a part of the Senate.
Thank you. I'll yield for further questions.
Vice Speaker Advait. Senator Lent.
What are some of the committees that you'd be interested in joining?
So I know there's a lectures committee, that's one. There's the student initiatives committee that I'm interested in joining.
Vice Speaker Advait.
So I know Rules went through this a little yesterday, but could you perhaps speak to your time commitments and whether or not you believe you will have the ability and the time resources available to hold yourself to the requirements of this office?
So in the Rules Committee meeting yesterday, they told me about what the commitments are. I do have the time for that in my schedule this semester. What else was your question?
Just if you had the time and resource. I think you answered my question.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll yield.
Speaker Weathers.
Hi, I just want to make it clear to the body what the qualification, how qualified you are. So can you explain a little bit about the process that you went through with LAS and how they nominated you to represent them?
So I talked to the president of the LAS Council. She asked me a few basic interview questions, what I bring to the table, why I'm interested in this. So I emailed her. She looked through my questions, and she said she was pretty satisfied with them. So she nominated me. After that, I did get an email from Advet, and I was at the Rules Committee meeting yesterday.
Okay, thank you. Call the question.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Any closing comments from Vice Speaker Debate? No closing comments. We'll go into a voting period. UC has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominee for LAS Senate unanimously? Seeing no objection, you've been confirmed. Congratulations. We'll have you stay up there, and one of the justices from the Supreme Court is going to swear you in.
Please repeat after me. I solemnly swear or affirm
I solemnly swear or affirm
to execute the duties of my position
to execute the duties of my position
as prescribed by the Constitution
as prescribed by the Constitution
and other laws of the government
and other laws of the government
for the benefit of all students.
for the benefit of all students.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Moving on to 2021-3-024 SG, sitting senators to the Public Relations Committee with Speaker Weathers.
Move to add the new senator to the roll.
Any objection? Great, you've been added to the roll.
Okay. So if both of the senators would like to approach the podium, Senator Becker and Senator Haas. I believe both of these senators were already at-larges on the committee, so now they're just being moved from at-larges to senators. As far as I know, they've been very diligent and a valuable asset to those to that committee, so I don't think there should be any problem. Okay, well, it's still my opening speaking privilege. I guess I do have a question. Being that the power of student government, our ability to affect change, comes from how well people know about us, how much faith the students have in student government. Do either of you have any ideas on how to improve that, or any projects for the rest of the semester? Anything tailored towards improving student awareness of student government?
Podcast. Oh, there it is. And that never really got anywhere, but we could definitely work harder on that, since I know a lot of people like to listen while they walk on campus or just to get more informed in a way that doesn't involve reading, because people don't like to read.
I'm really into outreach. I know 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, when I was standing up here wanting to be a senator. I talked a lot about like reaching out to off-campus students, but for PR committee, just like outreach to all Iowa State students. So that'd be something that I would work on.
Okay, thank you both.
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? Speaker Weathers, any closing comments? No closing comments. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominees for PR committee unanimously? Seeing no objections, you both been confirmed. Congratulations. Moving on to 2021-3-025 SG, sitting as Senator for the Diversity and Inclusion Committee with Senator Claiborne.
If Senator Finaldi wants to go up to the podium.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to read from my computer, so sorry. But hi, hope everyone's doing well tonight. My name is Alex Finaldi, for those who don't know me. I'm currently an LAS senator and a current member of the PR committee. I was reached out to by Eliana, the director of DEI, about my interest in being part of this committee. Firstly, I was incredibly honored to be considered to hold a seat on this committee. Secondly, I was frankly a little wary of my own credibility to be part of this committee. However, after some self-reflection and conversations with friends and members of our organization, I was humbly reassured that I would be a proper fit for this team. Throughout my life, I have faced many battles with mental health and unique relationships, forcing me to grow up sooner than I should have. I saw this as a negative thing for a very long time. However, I now see it as one of the most important times in my life. It has led me to become the strong, powerful, and confident individual that I believe that I am. As a woman, fighting for what I believe in is not always easy nor expected. I am a woman who is confident in her beliefs. When something isn't right, I voice those thoughts. I believe that being part of this organization is without a doubt a place where I can be a proactive ally, and I hope that you all agree. I am pleased to already be part of a DEI project with Senator Claiborne. Some of you may be aware of the DEI training that we are trying to implement in the athletic scene. This is something that we are very proud of. I'm also in the midst of another project. I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of StuGov members about this professional headshot photo booth that we are in the process of getting onto campus. This will enable all students to have free access to professional headshots on campus. I see this as a necessity for all students. In conclusion, I am greatly appreciative and grateful to be considered to hold a position on this committee. And to get out of the way, Vice Speaker Debate, I am available on Thursdays from 6 to 7 when DEI meetings take place. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Any closing comments? No closing comments. We'll go ahead and go into a voting period. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominee for DEI committee unanimously? All right, seeing none, you've been confirmed. Congratulations, Alex.
Thank you.
Moving on to 2021-3-026 SG, confirming senators to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Seth.
Hi, if the nominees would like to approach the podium. So I interviewed Max and Carlos last week about Student Initiatives Committee. They had a lot of ideas as to projects that they wanted to work on, and even brought up some ideas for new projects that they wanted to pursue in the committee. And they're also available during the committee time. So I'm going to get that question out of the way early for Vice Speaker. And yeah, they seem to be a really good fit for the committee, and I'm very excited to have them join. But if y'all want to talk more about your qualifications, why you want to be on SI, you know, the usual.
Yeah, sure. So I guess the biggest reason why I want to join, I don't really have any experience in SI, although I will kind of use my experience in my constituency council of engineering student council there. So the biggest reason I got involved there was a sense of wanting to be involved and sort of provide services for my fellow students and to kind of raise awareness about both constituency councils and I guess now student government as well. And I really feel that student initiatives is a really good fit for that because obviously it's to get students aware of student government and provide projects. So it's pretty much everything that I sort of want to accomplish. And I do like some of the existing projects, like the safety walk. And I guess I can speak a little bit to the ideas that Senator Seth mentioned. First and foremost, like, I'm a transfer student, so I kind of feel very strongly about transfer students in general, primarily because transfer students have like half the time of a normal student. And so I feel like not only is like everyone missing out, like normal students in general, but transfer students have even less time to get involved in student government. So I feel like my primary goal of being on SI committee is to get the word out in every way we possibly can to transfer students to try to get them involved in either their constituency councils or student government, or hey, maybe both, because that's what Carlos and I are doing. So that's kind of my idea there, is try to get the word out. And then second idea is maybe establishing but revamping the current student government Discord server. I guess I have a lot of experience with managing Discord servers. I set the Discord server up for Engineering Student Council, and I would definitely be happy to do that for student government. So I guess that's pretty much everything I have.
Hello, my name is Carlos. Over the past week, since I was seated as a engineering senator, I took kind of a break and reflected on a lot of what I've done throughout my time here in college. Basically, I came to the conclusion that I'd like to just set apart what I've done for the most part, even though that career has been somewhat decorated and has been quite long and lengthy. I feel like student initiatives has been the move for me, to keep it plain and short. This has been my bread and butter ever since I was in high school. I've always gotten involved in my community. I've always been pretty proactive in the sense that I'm always looking for ways to improve said committee instead of just waiting for issues to turn up. And like that, being in engineering, the term problem solver usually comes to mind, but there's a lot of leadership that goes into that. So that's mostly my intuition to wanting to be in student initiatives.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Wait, do you withdraw your call? Vice Speaker Debate.
Senator Garcia, could you please speak to any projects or any substantive areas of interest you might have working on the committee? I know Senator Kuehler, you touched on that a little, but I'd like to hear a little more from you if that's okay.
So I have a few, but the biggest one right now at the moment is, I mentioned this when I was being seated as a senator. There's a big miscommunication between colleges, and there's a lot of already statutes in place for that. Like, you've seen Engineering Student Council is already in place for the engineering college, and there's a lot of great work that a lot of organizations do. They're just not very well connected. So a big initiative I like to focus on just communication and collaboration as a whole within the entire university.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to touch base on that. I yield call to question.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Go ahead and go into closing comments. Senator Seth, any closing comments? All right, going ahead and going into a vote now. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to confirming the nominees for Student Initiatives Committee unanimously? See no objections. You've been confirmed. Great. Moving on to 2021-3-028SO, ordering the finance director to include internal clerks in the FY23 budget with Vice Speaker Debate.
Yeah, so this is a bill, an order, I suppose, that came out of discussions with Finance Director Zastro. He simply asked that this question be put to Senate before any further action is being taken. What this would really do is, the order itself isn't, I guess, doing anything in and of itself, but it is instructing the finance director as an officer of the legislative branch to include clerks for Rules Committee as well as a clerk of the court in the budget for the financial year 2023. I'll let Finance Director Zastro explain the rest.
Yeah, so just a little bit of context for this. The way that we currently do clerks, the two people who get paid are the clerk of the Senate and the clerk for Finance Committee. The clerk of the Senate has always been a paid position as far as I'm aware because Trevor does a lot for us. He transcribes the meetings when he's not here, and even when he is here, he works after the fact to make sure that gets done. Same thing for our current clerk and finance committee, Kiara Hines. She spends a lot of the whole time in committee working on it, and then spends hours the next day finishing the transcription. Historically, these two have been paid positions because they're the way that like finance procedure occurs. If there are any violations, there needs to be really clear evidence of what's going on, because every dollar given to one organization is a dollar not given to another. So there's a lot of contention if our rules aren't applied equally. It's really important that we know exactly what happened. So adding these two clerks is something that Vice Speaker Advait had wanted to do as a member of Rules Committee previously. When I was on the committee last year, the Vice Speaker at the time, Mariana Gonzalez, had a tough time participating in discussion and taking the notes, which is currently the duty of the Vice Speaker. The Clerk of the Court is something that a member of the court asked me to do to add into the budget. Financially, the Clerk of the Court, I would have budgeted at $15 a session, for a total of $390 on the year, and the rules clerk I had budgeted at $20. That would be $520 a year. One reason that I wanted to bring this up is 2 years ago we had a bill raising the scholarship for the finance director, and a conversation that we had then was whether or not it's fair allocating more money for ourselves when budgets for student organizations generally are going down. That bill ultimately failed because we thought it was not worth it, which is why I wanted to have this Senate order instead of just including it in our budget and just assuming that it's okay. So I'd really appreciate discussion on this. I don't have a super strong opinion one way or the other, but I think this is something that's definitely worth discussing.
Senator Mahoney.
I will speak on Rules Committee clerking because I kind of helped out former Vice Speaker Eliana or Crabb last semester doing that. Me taking minutes for rules allowed her to be far more involved in the Rules Committee itself. Otherwise, after the fact, it was a lot of hours of work to like go back, figure out everybody's voices, and retranscribe it from a recording. Whereas at least if you had some notes in the meeting, you could better put it back together and spend way less time outside the meeting. Being a member of Rules this semester, I've watched Vice Speaker Advait sometimes struggle with it, trying to like talk and run the meeting slides and take minutes at the same time, especially with typically the Vice Speaker being somebody that does write a lot of fairly technical bills and does have to talk a lot during rules. And I think Rules Committee being a more technical committee, that does carry some liability where sometimes you do need to go look at the meeting minutes, especially if we're having hearings or anything of that matter. I do think it would be highly beneficial, at least for Rules Committee, to have one. And I'm sure if our court members were here, they would probably echo a very similar thing for the court. I think meeting minutes are something we found that are extremely important this year, and I especially think they're very important for like these two very technical and potentially impactful committees. I yield.
Senator Seth.
Hi, Finance Director Zastro. My question. So I have a clarifying question to start. So can you tell me how much you wanted to pay the two clerks per session? Was it 15 and 20?
The rules clerk I had budgeted at 20. The clerk of the court I had budgeted at 15. The difference for that, even though they're typically about the same amount of time, is that taking minutes for rules is tough because it's repeating numbers, and that's something that you really have to go back and make sure you're catching everything right. The court, I think, would be a little easier to take minutes for, which is why I have it paid a little less.
Okay, so do you think like a $5 like pay increase for like the rules clerk is like, do you think that like, I guess like that amount could be, kind of discussed down a little bit, or is that like a hard and fast, like it should be like 15 and 20?
No, the reason that finance currently gets paid 30 a meeting is because our meetings are longer. Our meetings are scheduled for 2 hours. Just from my discussions with Kiara, our clerk, she took notes from the joint Rules Finance meeting, and she said that it took her significantly longer to transcribe those minutes. This Senate order doesn't say at what point I'll budget them, so if just kind of general discussion would prefer that they're funded at a similar level, I'm fine to incorporate that into the budget.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I yield.
Senator Finaldi,
I move to add Senator Goff to the roll, please.
any objection? Great, Senator Goff has been added to the roll. Oh, Finance Director Zastor, you have to be yielded time, correct? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I cannot speak on this. This is not codified as financial legislation. Yeah.
It's not codified as finance, so someone want to yield their time? Mahoney, go ahead.
I think like a lot of people are just taking this as is. We're looking at a budget deficit this year of it could be 250,000. I mean, if we're in, we might be passing a bill for taking a significant part of that from special projects, but I think there needs to be discussion on this. We're talking about money that would not be allocated to other organizations here. It's close to $1,000 total. I mean, consider that. Consider what $1,000 does for us in our rules minutes and our clerk of the court minutes, weighed against an event for Indian Students Association, right? I think we need more discussion on that before we vote on this.
Senator Becker.
Okay, I don't know how to use mine, but I know like 10.
Let's have someone pass it to you because otherwise people at home can't hear.
Okay, so I work for the university at the gym, and I know a lot of people who work like dining hall and stuff, and like the most people who work for the university are making is 13 an hour. So it seems kind of crazy. I mean, you're paying someone 30 for 2 hours, so that's 15 an hour. That's more than most people are being paid by the university.
I would say, I don't know if it's completely proportional to the hour, because the finance clerk, even though the meetings are 2 hours, does go back and transcribe errors in the next day. So it's probably closer to like 3.5 hours of work, I would guess.
Speaker Weathers.
It is a fair amount of money. That's a fair point. But these minutes are required. We have to have them taken. So either we have them taken in a very poor manner, or we can't find someone to fill the spots, and then we can't meet our own laws, or we allocate the money to do this. So I guess our two options are to either get rid of the minutes requirement, which is a whole route in and of itself that I'm not willing to go down right now, or we allocate money to get the job done right, as far as I see it. I yield.
Senator Seth.
So I guess like my question would be, I don't think there's anybody from the court here, but Vice Speaker Advait, could you maybe speak a little bit to the need for maybe having a rules clerk? Because while we need to be taking minutes, it's required, we have to do this, but I'm just wondering, to what degree are we sacrificing the quality of the minutes by not having just a straight up clerk? Like, is it absolutely essential to have a rules clerk or a clerk of the court? I'm not going to speak on that because there aren't any representatives to ask, but Vice Speaker Advait, could you maybe speak to that?
I certainly cannot speak to the court. I will limit my comments to Senate itself. At least the way I see it, rules does look at, there's a couple very good points have already been made, and on top of that, rules does look at some sensitive things as well. For example, relating to the nonfeasance process, removal bills, hearings to that accord, and I think, well, at least from my perspective, there's two things here. It's if you have poorly written minutes for like the removal process, because I know a lot of people on Senate try to read those minutes, especially if rules is going through a removal bill process. And the other thing is, if you have the vice speaker taking those minutes, they are inherently a part of that body, and you could argue they have something of a conflict of interest in whether they're a balanced representative between the individual that's being removed, removal legislation being drafted against them, or are simply going through a disciplinary hearing, if you will, as opposed to the vice speaker, who is literally part of the body that's debating and voting on whether or not to pursue that course of action against them. I guess if you want me to speak to my personal experience, I'll keep this brief, but maybe I'm an anomaly. I think I do write a fair amount of bylaw and rules-related legislation, and it certainly does become a little overwhelming for me, at least in committee, to type, talk, explain bills, answer questions people have. Sometimes people have questions on parliamentary procedure that I have to answer in tandem with taking the minutes. It does get to be a whole lot. I've just resorted to recording the meeting at this point and then spending an hour to 2 hours of my time after the meeting, outside of the meeting, just taking those down myself. And it is really busy. I personally think it's strenuous, but again, I can only speak to myself here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for your commentary. How much time do I have left for my speaking privilege?
You have about 2 minutes left.
Okay. I have one question then for Finance Director Zastro. So you said that essentially if we add together the amount that we'd be paying these clerks would be about $1,000. What kind of a dent would that have on our ability to allocate funds to student organizations?
The total number that we have for student organizations, both sports clubs and all student organizations for next year, is just over $1 million. I also can easily fall into the trap of, $1,000 is only, what, 1/1000th of that or something like that. But, be prudent here, be prudent there. That adds up quick. I've already carried over for next year. Last night, Finance Committee carried over $8,000 from student government's budget from this fiscal year to next fiscal year. Little things count.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I yield. Oh my gosh.
Senator Claiborne.
I move to add Senator Ruley to the roll.
You also remove Garcia.
Yeah, and then I also move to remove Garcia and Adegarlo from the roll.
Is there any objection? Those senators have been added and removed.
And then I did have a question. I don't know if you already said this, but is there a specific amount of money that is set aside for the Clerk of Finance? And then if this bill does pass, do you have an idea of what the Clerk for Rules would have?
Yeah, so in our budget for this past fiscal year, it was the finance clerk over the course of the year was given $720. The rules clerk would be given $520 if I were to implement it into the budget as it currently stands, and the clerk of the court would be given $390.
Senator Ruley.
But I did write down some of the notes I had for this. Currently, I would say I'm not in favor of this order. I don't know, like I said, I don't know the conversation that's happening, but allocating more funds for us essentially means we are disallocating more funds for other student organizations. I don't know if there's been a dollar amount for both these clerks thrown out yet.
Yeah, $20 per meeting for the rules clerk, $15 for the clerk of the court.
Okay. We said on Finance Committee this is a cutting year for us, and so adding more stuff to student government's budget will only make it harder to cut funding for other organizations. My second point is we also did not have a finance clerk for the first part of our fall semester, which it was unfortunate, but I find it difficult to see how we can try to add 2 more clerks for if we can if we could almost, it was difficult for us to get 1 clerk for finance. That's just my 2 cents on it. I'm personally going to vote no on this, but
Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? We'll go into closing comments with Vice Speaker Abate.
I guess I'll make a note or two. From a standpoint of principle, I certainly think we can go either way with this. There's no hard and fast rule. I'm going to keep my personal opinion out of it. I do think, however, if finance says having a clerk, it stands to reason that rules does. If rules doesn't, it stands to reason that finance doesn't. At least that's how I think about it. Also, as a note, this will not benefit me. This will only take effect if passed for the next vice speaker. So as such, I don't believe I have a conflict of interest, and I imagine I'll find myself voting yes. I just wanted to make that clear tonight, but do not let that dissuade you from voting no if that's where you found yourself at the end of this debate. I yield.
All right, we'll be voting, or we'll do a roll call vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain, beginning with Advait.
No.
Yes. Ruley?
No.
Seth?
No.
Waitmeister?
No.
Weathers?
Yes.
Moscar?
Yes.
And Larson?
Yes.
Vote of 11 to 9 to 0. You don't need a simple majority, the bill passes. Moving on to 2021-3-008Y, adopting the operating rules of the Senate with Vice Speaker Advait.
Hello, everybody. This is the bill we've been seeing for almost a couple of months at this point now. It went through second read on rules yesterday, and I'm happy to say it's like ready for prime time. Just to give a quick overview, this will, at least in my opinion, make it a little simpler, similar to how the court has its own rules of operating procedure. Senate will have its own in a document, so that way if you're looking for something related to Senate, you don't have to trudge through the entirety of the bylaws just to look at that, look at Senate-related things. As to what's in the bill itself right now, the most important thing in my opinion is, at least, there's a few components of bylaw review. I've corrected a lot of numbering things and ensured all the pointers are going to the right sections. With regards to the bylaws, the Senate sections have been taken out, and those chapters have now been reserved, which essentially just means if Chapter 2 is being deleted from the bylaws, Chapter 3 is not Chapter 2, it still stays Chapter 3. That way, if election code has something going to the old chapter, well, in this case, likely Chapter 10 or something of that sort, we don't have to renumber every single governing document. This is making, I guess, it's making things a little more efficient in terms of at least rules not having to, and other election commission-like entities not having to go through everything and fixing that. Lastly, speaking of renumbering, you might notice something funny with the computer formats here. So if you go to the linked document, you will notice it is a Google Doc. However, it says open in Word only. That's because the bylaws in our governing documents exist as a in master copy form as a Word docs file on the chief officer's drive. It's a little funky working with Word files in Google Docs, so this is really just representative. Dawson here will get the source docs file with the formatting not broken. If you do see anything, I don't think anything's broken right now, but if anything was, I guess this just explains that. Other than that, that's really it. I will move the amendments on screen, though. Well, first of all, I will move the Rules Committee amendments.
Great. There's been a motion to move the Rules Committee amendments, and a second. We'll go ahead and go into a discussion period for that. Question has been called for and seconded. We'll go into a vote on the amendments. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adding the Rules Committee amendments unanimously? Great. Seeing no objections, the Rules Committee amendments have been added. Back on the main motion.
I will also make the amendment to, it seems to have been accepted already, but essentially update the links to go to the right document.
There's been a motion to update the links with just amendment. Is there a second? Going into a discussion period on the amendment. Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adding the amendment unanimously? Seeing no objections, the amendment's been added. Back on the main motion once again.
I will also make a third amendment after discussing with Dawson. I think this is the best way to do it. Because we do have another bylaw bill up tonight, this will essentially just instruct the speaker to incorporate all changes in bylaw bills between the passage of this and the actual bylaw taking effect into this new document. So. I didn't want to write this in before time. I yield.
Speaker Weathers.
While Vice Speaker debates typing that out, I just wanted to offer myself up as a source to answer any questions. It's really not very complicated. It is changing. So the way we are going to amend these rules is via a new type of bill, but it's basically going to be the exact same. It gets a first read, it goes to rules, it comes back. It needs a vote, 2/3 vote. No different than a bylaw bill. So it really is just making a bylaws part 2, except for the fact that it will be entirely up to Senate. It will not be subject to veto. So nothing much beyond that. I yield.
There's a motion to move the amendment on screen. Is there a second? Second. All right, go into a discussion period on that. Question has been called for and seconded. Going into a voting period on that amendment. We'll do unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adding that amendment unanimously? Great, seeing no objections, the amendment's been added. Back on the main motion. Senator Seth.
Okay, so I have a question to either Speaker Weathers or Vice Speaker Advait. So I guess in terms of or structure and how things work, what does this bill, would this bill actually change anything significantly in any way, shape, or form? Or is it just kind of reordering things so it's easier to read and find things for senators?
Really just that. It's not, if you mean by structurally, it's not changing our rules, it's not changing procedures. Those are essentially just carried over from the bylaws. Yeah, what you said.
Okay. Yeah, Speaker Weathers, if you have a comment.
Yeah, the only real distinction I can think of is the one I mentioned earlier, is that these rules won't be within the grasp, not that they're overreaching or anything like that, but of the executive branch. There won't be any means to veto a change to the Senate Rules of Order. So otherwise, they're identical.
Okay, so then a follow-up question I would have then is that if, say you did want to write something that would affect the executive branch, then that would be technically a bylaw bill now. And then if you wanted to do something that would just affect Senate, it would be Senate bylaw bill or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Essentially just a Senate order.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. Thank you. I yield.
Senator Claiborne.
I move to remove Senator Lent from the roll.
Any objection? Right, seeing none, Senator Lent's been removed from the roll.
And I would also like to yield my time to Finance Director Zastro.
Hi, y'all. Just as somebody who was in rules last year, as a little bit of perspective, maybe just a tiny bit of pushback on this. Last year, there was a Senate bill amending the bylaws that was vetoed by the president. So that's not really theoretical. Whether we believe that is a good or a bad thing to allow institutionally is probably something worth discussing. In the past, I know that there was the one vetoing the University Affairs Committee, I believe. It was Chief of Staff Ludwig's bill when he was Speaker. And there were some larger institutional issues that the president thought that they had some differing perspective on that got vetoed, and the veto was never overridden by the Senate. So just something to consider.
Any more discussion? Question has been called for and seconded. Is there any objection to voting now? All right, seeing none, we'll go into closing comments. Vice Speaker Debate, no closing comments. We'll go ahead and go into a roll call vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Edvate.
Yes.
Hadagarla, Becker.
Yes.
Brecht.
Yes.
Claiborne.
Yes.
Finaldi. Goff. Haas. Kuehler.
Yes.
Larson. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Patel.
Yes.
Ruley.
Yes.
Seth.
Yes.
Strickland.
Yes.
Thornton. Wagmeister.
Yes.
Weathers.
Yes.
Moskar. Of a vote of 19 to 0 to 0, the bill passes. All right, moving on to next general order 2021-3-010, permitting effective pathways to Senate involvement, parentheses Pepsi. Vice Speaker Debate.
All right. My fellow senators, welcome to Pepsi. On a very serious note, though, this bill, I believe, will be far more impactful than most of the bylaw bills that come out of rules, simply because it's working really hard, I think, to streamline the process to add new senators between elections. Now, many of you were added through a nominating council, and as it stands right now, we have no way to add senators to empty seats if the constituency council, such as LAS council or SUV council, simply does not exist or is not functional enough to make a nomination. Just two examples that come to mind already. I know design doesn't have a functional constituency council, neither does SUV. So I guess the alternative really here is if either of those senators were to leave now or at any point in the future, we would have no way to fill those seats. And this would leave interested students out of Senate. I know those senators are working really hard to get their constituencies up, but the point is we have a lot of constituency councils, and at any given point, there's going to be a couple that aren't exactly entirely functional. At least historically speaking, this is what I've seen to be the norm. This really just fixes that. It gives us a path to add interested students. Even when we do have functional councils, sometimes we have problems where the councils just don't get back. They're just taking insanely long. And I think being a senator, you're essentially working for free. It's a volunteer. You're volunteering your time. And this isn't the only way on campus to drive change. It isn't the only way to be involved. And if someone wants to be involved and we're essentially telling them, oh yeah, we'll get back to you maybe in 5 weeks once the constituency council makes a nomination, it's going to drive interested people away from Senate. And this is something that's really important to me. I think this is something that will help us get through that process at least. That's really what this bill would do. I do have an amendment to propose, but before that, I'll just propose the rules amendments.
It's been a motion to propose the Rules Committee amendments. Is there a second? All right, go into a discussion on those. Question has been called for.
Second.
And seconded. Going into a voting period on that amendment, on those amendments. Unanimous consent has been called for. Is there any objection to adding the Rules Committee amendments unanimously? All right, seeing none, the Rules Committee amendments have been added. Back on the main motion.
I do have a second amendment to add. It's essentially going to add, essentially make it clear that if a constituency council above is out of contact, unable, or otherwise incapable, and then under the speakers section, it's going to add in language that says the source and the circumstances. And just to explain what this is doing, I do believe if a constituency council just never gets in touch, I don't think that's a good reason to just hold the seat empty. I think that would also be a good, essentially, I would argue that if a constituency council cannot respond to so much as a business-related email within a reasonable sense of time, I'd imagine that's a test of them being functional in and of itself. And then it's also, the second thing this amendment is doing is adding an obligation to the speaker to inform Senate of where the nomination is coming from and the circumstances. So I'd imagine the speaker would use that to tell you, oh, hey, we reached out to them 3 weeks ago, they never got back, which is why we're taking this step. I guess the goal here is to make sure we're not stepping on constituency council's toes willy-nilly, but at the same time giving us the chance to go ahead if the circumstances truly do warrant it, and requiring the speaker to make it clear to Senate what's going on so that Senate can make an informed decision instead of it being not transparent, I suppose.
Did you propose the amendment? Okay, is there a second? All right, go into a discussion period on the amendment. Is this for the amendment, Speaker Weathers? Okay, Speaker Weathers.
A question for you, Vice Speaker Debate. Do you have any intention to specify, or do you have a ballpark parameter of how long out of contact needs to be?
My intent is that Senate really decides how long this is. This is why I have put in, this is why the amendment includes language making it imperative for the speaker to be fully transparent about the circumstances. So that way, for example, if we have a hard and fast deadline, like 2 weeks, and maybe it's the last meeting of the semester, I think it's just an easier way to add in the flexibility we need with the school timeline. Maybe there's a spring break in the middle, who knows? I think Senate can, and Rules Committee too, can make a reasonable decision on what is a reasonable timeline, given the circumstances and what part of the semester we're in.
Okay, thank you. I guess initially on its face, I'm already hesitant to have Rules Committee or anyone in Senate be appointing senators. I think constituency councils typically are always going to be as representative of a particular population that we can get outside of the general election. I think I need a moment to think on it.
Senator Mahoney.
I'll be honest, the language on its face, I think, is somewhat of a rehash of a conversation we had in Rules Committee, which was we were concerned about somebody saying, oh, we'll work on it, or we'll think about it, and then 4 or 5 weeks later, they haven't responded. We could start considering that out of contact if they're not responding in those cases. And I'm hesitant to step on a constituency council's toes too much. I understand that they are our seats, but I'm hesitant to step on a constituency council's toes too much. I think being able to nominate in cases where there is no constituency council is a really great idea. I'm hesitant to, if it exists, for us to be stepping in what is constitutionally their job.
Senator Finaldi.
One thing I will say is I don't think that Senator Becker, Madeline, but Senator Becker would be here without kind of having this kind of situation brought to light. I tried to get in contact with the LAS Constituency Council for quite some time, and it was just a lot of time in between, and it was a little bit difficult, to be frankly honest. But I mean, I'm sure we're all glad to see her here filling a seat, so I guess that's kind of my take on it.
Senator Mays.
I will say I do have personal experience trying to deal with this, because when I originally was trying to get onto Senate, I think at the very end of October, it was a pretty difficult process getting in contact with the right people. But I also do believe that if we were to make it so that existing constituency councils were to follow certain guidelines, I think those need to be stated within what's written and have specific guidelines. And I also think those guidelines should be loose if they do exist, because it's their constitutional right to function and elect particular people. And I guess I feel like there should be specifications that if they say, well, we're working on it, say, okay, we're gonna give you this amount of time if you don't have someone ready that by this point, just specific specifications I think are completely necessary if this is gonna be a part of the bill.
Senator Goff.
I have a clarifying question first. Is this, so if I'm understanding this correctly, is this for people who express interest in an open Senate seat that then approaches the Senate from that they're having issues with the constituent council? You can answer, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I can speak from personal experience, at least since I've been elected vice speaker. Most people interested in Senate reach out to us. It's not normally very intuitive to students that they have to apply to a constituency council to get on Senate. If you want to join a student organization, you typically reach out to the officers listed on the student organization database for that organization. So it's either, I imagine, Dawson or me, or in some cases, Julia or Megan that would get those emails. And then after that point, we're essentially just trying to get in touch with the constituency councils and in some cases hounding them to respond if they are not getting in touch with us.
And I have one more question. This might be counterintuitive because you're saying that constituency councils are hard to keep in contact with, but is this something that you've maybe proposed to one of those constituency councils that has failed to maybe reach up to par in the past, or set any kind of hard deadlines with them, or is this just something that you've kind of proposed on your own?
As in, normally when we're sending constituency council emails, we don't say respond within 2 weeks or, because we can't really do anything about it. I guess this bill was written to give us an option if we need it.
Okay, thank you. I yield.
Senator Larson.
I move to add Senator Ulrich to the roll.
Any objection? Okay, I'm going to add to the roll. Senator Kuehler. You press the push button here at the bottom and hold it for a hot minute and then turn green. There we go.
So I guess I just have a question. So like, let's just say a constituency council is deemed to be out of contact. What would be the process of like finding senators to sort of go through the Senate confirmation process?
So I imagine the process staying the same as it is right now. As I mentioned earlier, most students interested in Senate get in touch with the officers for the organization that they're interested in. So I cannot think of, well, most nominations, at least in my time as vice speaker, all of them in fact, have started off as them reaching out to me or Dawson, or either just someone within student government reaching out to a friend and asking them if they'd be interested, at which point they email me or Dawson anyway. And then we go to a constituency council just to sort of go through the process as required. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I yield.
Great. Moving on to Senator Claiborne.
Yeah, I just had a question for the new engineering center and the new LAS center that we sat tonight. Do you guys have a specific like window time that it took for you to get into contact with student government, then to get your constituency council to approve, and then for LAS, I know that we have had kind of a hardship in the past. So if you want to but if you want to clarify like how long it took for you to get this position to interview with the president to go from there.
So as he mentioned, I did reach out to Advait first. Then he told me about the process. Actually, in my personal case, it didn't take as long. It was a span of 5 days, I think, in which I emailed the president and I got through my interview. So my experience wasn't that bad, but yeah, my experience wasn't that bad.
My personal experience was pretty good, actually. I mean, I might have a little bit of a bias here, but Engineering Student Council seems pretty functional. And we have our weekly meetings on Monday. Vice Speaker Advait mentioned that there were 2 openings for engineering senator seats, and Senator Garcia and I both wanted to be nominated. Our constituency council nominated us, and we were in contact with Speaker Weathers and Vice Speaker Advait within a day. And then the next day, on that Tuesday, we attended the Rules Committee meeting, and then we're confirmed immediately after that. So I guess my situation is a little interesting considering that I am a part of my constituency council, so that might have taken away a lot of the delay that other people might experience.
Senator Thornton.
I would just like to circle back to one of the points being that constituency councils can sometimes not exist. The College of Design Constituency Council has not existed for maybe at least 2 years. And that might be due to the fact that students just graduated and other students just left. Even faculty members don't know what happened. They just stopped hearing back from the constituency council one day. Their emails never got returned. So I would really like to, if we're not going to like the part where we seat because the constituency council isn't responding to us, I'd like to have discussion on that, or maybe amending that so that we can still pass this bill so that we can seat when a constituency council doesn't exist. Because I've been trying to get a constituency council started, but it's not easy. Reaching out to student organizations that are design-oriented, like design clubs, and reaching out to design students is not as fruitful as you would expect. I've ended up just waiting outside of designated meeting times, and then nobody shows up. So please, at least for my sake and the future Senator of Design's sake, because I do graduate at the end of fall, so there will be no design senator next spring because I'm running unopposed. There will be an empty design senator seat if we don't pass this, because there's no constituency council. Let's continue talking about this and maybe make some amendments before we just fail it. Thank you.
Just so the body is aware, there's 3 minutes and 30 seconds left to debate this amendment. Speaker Weathers.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we are on the specific amendment on screen. So this is adding the out of contact clause. I don't think anyone has a problem where if in the case of your constituency council senator Thornton, it doesn't exist. Obviously we need a means to appoint senators to represent those students. I guess my particular problem, the particular problem I think Senator Mahoney focused in on is that out of contact is a little bit vague and that we are stepping on what are the traditional boundaries of an already existing constituency council. And a constituency council, in my mind, will always represent that particular constituency better than I ever can, or better than Rules Committee can, for that matter. So I guess I'm not in favor of this amendment. I think it's a bit too vague on what out of contact is. If the constituency council doesn't exist, by all means, we need a means to have someone represent those students. But otherwise, out of contact is just too vague for me.
Vice Speaker Debate.
Yeah, I suppose out of contact really, for me at least, I'm coming from a place where, I mean, I understand the other arguments that have been put forth. I'm coming from a place where we just literally never hear back. And I think if you think of better language that you think can replace this, something that's more specific, I think we should still make that amendment, even if this fails. Because I think it is important to have something that says, if you just never hear back, well, unless I guess, yeah, that's really all I have to say. I yield.
I move a secondary amendment to strike the out of contact phrase.
Okay, there's been a motion for a secondary amendment, and a second. We'll go into a discussion period on that.
It's an amendment to an amendment. And I call the question.
Question has been called for and seconded. This is on the amendment to the amendment, so it would be, can you repeat that one more time just for the body understanding?
Striking the phrase out of contact.
All right, we'll go ahead and go into a voting period on that. Let's do a placard vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain, beginning with yeses. And noes. Is that right? Okay. We have a vote of 19 to 1 to 0. The amendment to the amendment passes. Back on the main amendment now. Question has been called for and seconded. We'll go ahead and go into a voting period on those amendments. Let's do a placard vote once again. Please vote yes, no, or abstain, beginning with yeses. Right, 20 to 0 to 0, the amendment passes. Back on the main bill. Main motion. Senator Seth?
So yeah, I would also like to echo Senator Thornton's point about not having a constituency council, because I don't have a constituency council, and in my experience, which is very similar to Senator Thornton's, it is very hard to get a constituency council up and running. In the event, say, for example, whoever is my successor as SUV senator, if they do have to leave or if they resign at any point, there just won't be an SUV senator. And I did some math the other day, and there's over, I think, roughly 1,000 people that live in SUV, so that's like 1,000 students that lost one representative. So I think that's pretty significant. So I don't really think any of us have any complaints about when there's just not a constituency council, but I do share Senator Invate's concerns about when the constituency council isn't responding. I'm not really sure what that would look like, but I do think it is important to consider situations where you just don't hear back. And at what point, do we say that the constituency council is unable? Like, when is it switched from not responding to unable? So just something to consider. I yield.
Senator Thornton?
I would also echo what Senator Seth just said, only because the College of Design's constituency council information was up for almost a year after the fact that they had been disbanded. So it had looked like they were still active. And so people were still reaching out to them, but in fact, people had graduated, and so no one was actually going to be responding to those emails. And so they were not going to be in contact. And so I feel like there's some merit to the point of that we should be doing something if there's no contact, but defining that point of how long we should be waiting is like the trick.
Senator Mahoney?
I don't have the exact wording off the top of my head, but perhaps instead of using the word like out of context, which could be interpreted to be so vague as, oh, they haven't responded in 2 weeks while they're interviewing people or something, use something like they never respond to that first contact, or there's no response at all. Perhaps, I don't know exactly how you would word that, but that might be perhaps the correct language or correct idea to capture that idea of like they exist in theory, but it's reaching out and they just straight up never respond. I would be comfortable with doing that, I think, but to say just out of context in general, I think is too broad, in my opinion.
Speaker Weathers?
Yeah, all valid points. I think it's already addressed with current language there, though. I think if they're unresponsive, if they've graduated, if there's no one in there, despite it being technically a registered organization, I think that can be classified as probably unable or otherwise incapable of nominating candidates. And since we did pass that clause there, saying the speaker has to inform Senate about the circumstances if there's any doubt as to whether or not they're unable to nominate a candidate, I guess the Senate can make the final call.
Senator Mays?
I feel like if I were to vote on this bill, I think what would make me most comfortable is having a guideline for no contact and then having a further guideline for if they've made contact and responded to initial emails or whatever, and then they aren't making a decision within a timely manner. I don't know what that guideline would necessarily be because it's not my decision, but I just feel like saying no contact at all or the way it is now is just kind of really broad, and there's so many situations.
Do you other time to?
The language you're referring
yield
to
my time.
was struck down in the last amendment, so we're not saying no contact anymore. That was taken out, so it's not a part of the bill anymore.
But now there's no language at all referring to anything like, or any differentiation between any of, I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking. I yield.
Senator Larson.
Okay, because I bet he could answer this. So let's say we do pass this bill and we can't get in contact with them, and so somebody nominates a senator and we don't think it was enough time. How would that look like? Would we just table the bill, or what would we do if we don't think that there was given enough time to contact like the constituency council? Like, how would that look like, just so I can kind of get an idea of like what this bill would do?
So do you mean in the case where there's been a unilateral nomination made, but then once it comes to the Senate floor, Senate believes not enough time was, the speaker didn't wait long enough. I guess rules didn't wait long enough.
Yes.
Yeah, I would imagine at that point we could simply table the bill for a week or more, however much Senate thinks is appropriate. And I also think of this in the sense that rules, whenever it's doing something, at least in committee, we think of, I'd imagine if it comes to something like this, rules is going to be like, well, it's only been 5 days since we reached out. It's possible the people running the council just had a really busy week and couldn't get back to us. And Senate's, I want to say Senate's full of mostly, well, near just essentially rational individuals that are going to question us if we act in such a hasty manner. So I imagine the punitive effect of that itself would prevent rules from making a hasty nomination in the first place. But if rules did, it could be tabled for a week, and in a sense that would be an indictment against rules judgment and that of the speaker and the vice speaker as well.
Okay, thank you. In that case, verbatim in the document suits what we're trying to do, just because we can take other actions to table this bill and give more time. So I'm in favor.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? Go into closing comments with Vice Speaker Bate.
Yeah, as we're moving into a vote, I would like to just ask Senate to, looking at the discussion, not look at the best case, but rather the worst case. We do have some senators here, especially Max Kuehler, I know, myself being on ESC, and Senator Kuehler being on ESC as well. That's sort of the golden standard, is just how quickly and efficiently that process can run through. But I think, and in the cases where the process is running that efficiently, the provisions of this bill would simply not take effect. This would only take effect in the worst case, which is what happens when the constituency council doesn't exist, or this, like we've had some senators that have just had to wait weeks and weeks and weeks. And as we're going ahead as an organization, I think it is really, really important for us to, I guess, recruit good talent and then retain it. And if on the way in, if the process is having such a high barrier, if it's such a convoluted process even to get in, what's to stop a student from just going, well, this is too much work, I'm just going to join first-year council instead, or engineering student council, or other pathways on campus through which you can be involved. I think student government has the potential to be a true vehicle of change, but that starts with us being, and I'll be the first to admit, I'm pretty pedantic, I'm very big on the rules, I'm very big on the principles, but I think this is one of those cases where we need to look at the practicalities of what's going on and how the bill we're passing, the structure we have, is affecting actual people actually interested in making an impact and actually trying to join student government to make that impact. With that, I yield. Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move on to a roll call vote. This is a bylaw change, so it does require 2/3 of present senators. There's currently 20 senators here, so that means 14 senators voting yes would need for passage of this bill, starting with Advait.
Yes.
Adegarla. Oh, excuse me, Ulrich.
Yes.
Becker.
Yes.
Brecht.
Yes.
Claiborne. Finaldi. Goff. Haas. Kuehler. Larson. Mahoney. Mays. Patel. Ruley. Seth. Strickland. Thornton. Wagmeister. Weathers. Maskar. And Claiborne. With a vote of 20 to 0 to 0, the bill passes. Moving on to new business, beginning with 2021-3-012F, funding Rodeo Club with Senator Ruley.
So, funding for their annual cycle, we funded this last year, and I only heard great things about it. If you have any questions, please, or any of your fantastic finance senators.
Moving on to 2021-3-013F, funding Destination Iowa State meals with Senator Claiborne.
Yes, so this is something that Vice President Decker came to me, and I think this is a great thing. We just want to fund, or at least have some sort of compensation for off-campus and transfer students for Destination Iowa State. As of right now, there is no free meals for transfer or off-campus students, but obviously on-campus do. And we want to bring that cost down to the move-in. So move-in currently right now is $7, and we're still asking dining for projection for next year. But we are thinking that's going to be $8 for next year, so we just did $3. And then we are going to provide 1,000 meals for Friday and Saturday. So if you have any questions, please ask.
Are there any questions of intent for Senator Claiborne? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to 2021-3-014F, funding ski and snowboarding club with Senator Patel.
I yield.
Do you want to just give a little bit of an, does Senator?
Oh, to give, okay, yeah, sorry. So we're funding ski and snowboarding club. They have a event on the 19th, so we were requesting to waive first read.
All right, there's been a motion to waive first read. Is there a second? Second. All right, we'll go ahead and discuss that. Speaker Weathers.
It's my understanding that the representative was unable to attend Finance Committee. Is that correct? Finance Committee? Yeah. Okay, I guess did Finance Committee still see the bill regardless? No, they did not. Okay, well, the Finance Committee hasn't seen this bill. I guess I'm not in favor of waiving second read. I yield.
Senator Ruley.
This weekend, if I'm correct. So I think it'd be good to at least hear what the club has to say. If we need to make any amendments, we can. But I don't want this to be I'd like to see the club get the funding for the tournament, even though they requested it late. We could even discuss about lowering it because the request came in so late, but I would still like to waive first read on this.
Finance Director Zastro.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I do think that we have an interest in making sure that everything is reviewed. I did meet with, this is the president, in the hallway for a little bit to get everything clarified. The numbers that we have on the screen reflect what the club is looking for. I'm not a senator, so I can't make those amendments, but that is, that's what the request needs to be looking like. That's exactly what we would have done in Finance Committee. I would have appreciated hearing from the treasurer, but this event's on Saturday. There's no reason to think that there's anything suspicious going on here. This is just a club that requested money a little bit late. I don't think we should penalize them for that.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting now? We're going to go into a voting period. Unanimous consent has been called for. There's been an objection. We'll go ahead and do a placard vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. This is on whether or not we should waive first read, so going right into the main motion like this were a general order. So starting with yeses. All right, noes. All right, a vote of 19 to 1 to 0. We're going to waive first read, go into the main motion. Senator Ruley. So a motion and a second to move the amendments made on screen. We'll go into discussion on those amendments.
Yeah, so this is exactly how, and if you want to say anything about this too, this is, I looked on our OFP. For this event, we had funded the travel. For whatever reason, the registration for the which is very weird. I don't know how we let that slip by, but it did. This is what was on their request. It was 15 for 15 people, $100 registration, $1,500, and we fund half. So that is that. If no one has anything, I'll call the question.
All right. Question has been called for and seconded. We'll go into a voting period on the amendments. We'll go ahead and go into a placard vote. Unanimous consent has been called for and seconded. Any objection to passing the Finance Committee amendments unanimously? All right. Amendments have been added. Back on the main motion.
Do you have the representative here? Do you want to just kind of talk about what the event is? If you have any, if you know why the request wasn't submitted until Monday, any information help?
It should be. You just go ahead and try to speak into it.
Okay, I'm Ryan Pretzer. I'm the president of the Ski and Snowboard Club. Sorry our treasurer couldn't be here today. He's busy. And then our race team captain, the one who submitted the request, they're actually racing right now at Seven Oaks, so it's a bit of a last minute thing. And speaking of last minute, we noticed that this wasn't funded. This wasn't on our budget for whatever reason. Last year, I guess they didn't account for it. Could be COVID, because this race is in Marquette, Michigan. It's kind of regionals, so we're just requesting funding so our teammates have the opportunity to go to regionals and then compete for the chance to make it to nationals in Lake Placid later this spring.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering that. I'm in favor of this bill. I like many senators in the room, but I don't like to see funding requests coming in this late. But this was a really weird case that, for whatever reason, we didn't fund them. I will yield the remaining of my time to Finance Director Zastrow.
Thank you. Just one other thing about this. One thing, I'm trying to remember this. This might have been why the registration wasn't funded. The way that we do SCC allocations is we give all sports clubs a number and we say you have to get down to this number. And a lot of times that'll mean we're like, 3/4 funding insurance for all sports clubs or something like that. Another instance could be where, ski and snowboard maybe wasn't sure that they would make it to regionals. And so that was taken out of your budget because of that. I'm really not sure. There were no minutes taken last year. So we have no record of that. So this is something that I understand why you would assume that it's covered because we did pay for transportation. And it's really weird that we paid for transportation, not registration. So I don't have any issue with this.
Senator Mahoney.
I just had a small question for either Finance Director Zastrow or another member of Finance Committee that was kind of a part of this bill. It sounds like we've had a history of funding the registration for this event in the past. Is that true?
I can take a look real quick, and I will get back to you in a few minutes if you want to let Advait speak, and then I can respond.
Vice Speaker Advait.
Question for Finance Director Zastrow. I know you said, Finance Director Zastrow? Oh, yes. I know you said you did speak to the president of the club in the hallway a little before. Could you perhaps elaborate more on how you attempted to emulate the traditional finance process in its entirety when looking at this bill?
I cannot pretend like I had a debate of the 7 people who are on Finance Committee by myself. I know that that is a missing aspect that was lost. But a lot of Finance Committee, especially with a request like this where it's just, it was submitted as a bundled lump sum of $750 requested. So I clarified how many people were going to the tournament, what the cost of registration was, ensuring that the 15 people that were going were paying for half of the registration, which is correct. As the bill stands now, it was originally written as 12. I made sure that there were 15 people going, which is according to what we paid for the transportation. I made sure that it was Marquette, Michigan instead of Marquette, Wisconsin, and that the distance for the travel that we already had funded was Marquette, Michigan instead of Wisconsin.
Sounds good. And I guess what I was a little interested in was, were other members of Finance Committee privy to this process? I guess, did they get a chance to look at the bill at all? Or?
I texted them during this meeting that I was making amendments on the bill, and I saw that Senator Ruley had the document open, so perhaps he saw it. You all probably saw me in the hallway. It was during this meeting, so you can gauge how long I was having that discussion by how long I was out in the hallway.
Nevertheless, I do agree. This is one of those cases where, you know, it's more important that we look at the people side of things and the principal side of things. I mean, this club is probably doing something that's really important to them, and this is a pretty simple bill on the face of it. So I will yield. And
Senator Ruley.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to you on that. Senator Mahoney, we have funded this at $750 for FY19, FY20, and FY21. So we have funded this the past 3 years.
Question has been called for and seconded. Any objection to voting no? Go into any closing comments from Senator Patel. If you have none, that's okay. Okay, perfect. We'll go into a voting period. Since this is a finance bill, we will do a roll call vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Edvate.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Becker.
Yes.
Brecht. Yes. Claiborne.
Yes.
Finaldi.
Yes.
Goff.
Yes.
Haas.
Yes.
Kuehler.
Yes.
Larson.
Yes.
Lent. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mays.
Yes.
Patel.
Yes.
Ruley.
Yes.
Seth.
Yes.
Strickland.
Yes.
Thornton.
Yes.
Wagmeister.
Yes.
Weathers. And Maskar. Of a vote of 19 to 0 to 1, the bill passes. All right. With that, we'll move on to closing announcements. Does anyone have any closing announcements? Senator Mahoney.
So as Mason said, the mental health first aid training bill got tabled indefinitely. It's basically because the original quote that I got said we need to pay for AV techs. We don't. So I wanted to explain a little bit about what's happening. I know people heard about the mental health first aid training, at least some of us in the room, that was at the town hall meeting or city council meeting that we had. Essentially, February 27th, here in this room, and March 27th, from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m., these are both Sundays, the training will be happening in here with Kinsey Phillips, the ISU mental health professional, or ISUPD mental health professional. Mental health first aid training basically is like first aid, but it's analogous to mental health. It'll teach you how better to deal with difficult mental health situations, both for yourself and other people. You do get fully certified at the end. It's good for like 2 or 3 years, I think. I'm super, super excited to bring it to campus. So please mark your calendars. There should be some emails and stuff going out relatively soon here. I'm working with PR on doing all the advertising for it. There'll be lots of food there as well, and Kinsey will be bringing the dogs as far as I understand. So please mark your calendars. February 27th and March 27th, 2 Sundays, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. in this room. Come do mental health first aid training. It'll be a great thing. Thank you.
Senator Larson.
I just wanted to feed off of his comment. So I went to Isle over the weekend, and the student wellness was there. And I know some senators were in the room when I asked this question. I asked the student wellness at Iowa State if there was mental health training, and they said no, that there was Green Dot. And as we all know, there's a lot of advocacy for Green Dot, but Green Dot is a bystander training. It doesn't really have a lot to do with mental health. And so I think this is a super good idea. Advay, actually, I was talking to him at the student government office and brought this up. So I was super excited to hear that like people were working on this, because I know we're always advocating for mental health. So I'm just super excited about this.
All right. Any more closing announcements for this evening? All right, with that, we'll move into Vice. No? Okay. All right, we'll move on to closing announcements from the Vice Speaker and Speaker.
I'm going to try and keep this brief. As I said in my ABCs 2 days ago, we still have a very large chunk of the semester to go as part of Senate. It can feel like elections are a month away, but inauguration is April 12th. That is essentially like within 1 week, one month before finals. So this term is going to continue until like 1 month before finals. That's well into the semester. Normally what happens is, I know we all get into Senate with ideas and things we're passionate about, and sometimes life gets in the way. And I guess what I'm trying to say is right now is the time to go full speed ahead. It is the time to pick up your passion projects and run with them. I know SI, PR, our committees are going full speed ahead. They've got a lot of exciting things coming up. We're also actually just within this week, we've added at least 3 people or talked to 3 people to get them onto committees or otherwise involved in student government. In that vein, if you know friends that are interested in this organization or just want to have an impact, they don't have to wait until elections. We have open seats. We can seat them right now. Again, people are our strongest asset. And then lastly, I just want to touch on office hours really quickly. I have not reported any nonfeasances, simply, like I said last week, to ensure that if you've forgotten to report your office hours, I just want to give people the chance to do that. So again, please, please, please do. I think tomorrow is about the farthest I'm going to go with not reporting those to Speaker Weathers. If it helps, I can also send out a document with what I have right now. But if you do remember that you did your office hours but simply didn't scan the form or simply didn't tell me or Speaker Weathers, please do that to make sure we're being as accurate in that as we can. And again, as usual, please continue doing your office hours. It is just an hour in the office a week. It is how we meet our fellow senators, find common ground, just being there, do homework, have lunch together, what have you. For our new senators, I know Speaker Weathers generally sends out a welcome document, so that'll get you more in tune. You will not have access to the office just yet, but eventually you'll be added to the roster, which will give you like key card access to the Senate office in the West Student office space. And again, we're here for you. Please reach out with questions if you have any. Lastly, go to lectures.iastate.edu. We have a lot of exciting lectures coming up. With that, I yield.
Okay, I'll be brief. Obviously an excellent debate tonight. I was really satisfied. I think we made some big changes. But rules is kind of what I'm passionate about. It's what people on the Rules Committee are passionate about. So I guess to step on the soapbox for just a second, I think there's kind of a general sentiment going around that student government maybe has a lack of purpose. We don't affect a lot of meaningful change. And I think that's fair to some degree. I find meaningful work in rules. I think it ensures institutional fairness. It ensures institutional excellence beyond just us. I mean, the room's kind of empty tonight. I think you can all see that. So if you find that you feel a little bit purposeless in your role in student government, tackle meaningful work. I think that's the most important solution to that you can find. Right now I'm working on the Local Affairs Committee with Trevor Poundstone. And I find that to be meaningful work because I think our relationship with the city is super important. And I think that positively affects both citizens of Ames and students, which is who we represent. So if you have that feeling of going around, talk to us, brainstorm some ideas, and I guess come up with some projects that give you a sense of purpose and feel like that you're actually affecting positive change for the students. We're more than happy to help with that. So I move to adjourn. Go Cyclones.
Seeing no objections, this meeting is adjourned.